Going to school for music is like this amazing wet dream for all nerdy guitar players. You think you're going to go to this place where you're going to meet all these amazing, like-minded, productive people. You're going to build this community and prepare yourself for an amazing career in music. Except it's totally not like that thing. I went to the 3-year jazz program at my local college. Needless to say, shit got kind of weird. So have a seat, get comfortable, have a snack, have a drink, because I'm going to tell you the story about how music school fucked up your boy Mrack, but also how it made me the man I am today. Strap in, folks. This one's going to be a doozy. I started taking guitar seriously around like the age of 11, mostly because I was this really fat, awkward, shy person who didn't have any friends. So I basically invested myself into music and video games quite heavily. As a teenager, high school was really weird for me. At this point, I'm really into metal music, right? I was the kind of dude who would comb through music forums and check out all the latest bands and all of the classics. I really did do my best to keep up with what was modern and happening in the scene at the time, which at the time was, a lot of like metalcore and hardcore bands were really popular, and same with like a lot of the metal revival kind of stuff. But more importantly, high school is when I really got into death metal. I love that stuff. I was into a lot of releases that were kind of like this. Graduation rolls around, I skipped an assload of class to play an assload of guitar, so I really didn't have very many career prospects. One day, me and my other guitar player friend are hanging out, and he says, I'm going to school for classical guitar this year. You should sign up and go for the music program as well. So, me being super into death metal, I'm thinking, oh my god, that's a fantastic idea. I am going to go into the local jazz program and I'm going to be the best guitar player in town because I am into all of this crazy, fast, amazing music and I'm going to be hot shit. What could possibly have gone wrong in that situation?
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
So, I spent about a year preparing for the audition. And sure enough, I got in, which is kind of a miracle because I sucked pretty hard. Okay, so music school basically works like this. You have your playing classes, such as your jazz improv class or your ensembles, which are basically bands that are assigned by the school, and you have an instructor who basically teaches you how to play together. You have stuff like that, but you also got the theory classes. And then you have some real fucking bullshit burner courses like the communications, which is basically high school English. By the way, that one sucked. I never forgot about that. I hated that shit. It was a waste of time. Now bear in mind, I really sucked during my first year. It was actually pretty awful and terrifying. Every time I went to my private lessons, I would get roasted by my guitar teacher, and it was really intimidating. Every time there was jazz improv classes, I would volunteer myself to play and get roasted by the teacher, and all the awful sounds I made me feel like I was really pissing off all of my peers. It was awful. I remember all of these really bad performances that I did during my first year that haunt my memories to this day. Not a day goes by where I don't think about some of those awful performances I did. Oh god. It wasn't good. There was a lot of really bad moments there. So, what I did was I practiced my ass off during first year. I'd lock myself in a way. Really try to get good. And sure enough, it kind of paid off. During my exams of the first year, I actually did pretty okay. I certainly wasn't the best player around, but I definitely was the most improved. So that's gotta be worth something. Does your boy Mrack, does he look like a quitter? That ain't me. I don't quit. No, that's not how I do. So bear in mind, during jazz school, I became one of those super cringe lord jazz guys, where I was the kind of dude, I was wearing khakis and V-necks, and I always had my hair slicked back, and I was wearing my stupid glasses that don't actually do anything. And I remember I would basically ditch all other forms of music and only care about jazz. It was really stupid. I was one of those guys where if there wasn't improvised solos, I didn't want to hear it. If the song didn't give me the richest, dankest harmonies, didn't want to hear it. If the musical information wasn't so rich and juicy, didn't want to hear it. Get that shit out of here. I was one of those guys. I turned into a huge elitist. And in retrospect, oh boy, do I definitely regret all of that, because I super don't stand by any of that to this day. So we got to get one thing straight here. Music school is a place you go to become a really good player. It is not the kind of place you go to really do anything else. You have to understand too that like your teachers are dudes who made it into the music scene, like the jazz and the classical music scene in like the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. So these dudes aren't young, hip internet people. These aren't the kind of dudes who are going to teach you how to be really good at internet marketing, how to get your music out there. You want to learn music production, how to become super self-proficient in school? Well, fuck that, kid. You better be practicing your alternate scales, and you better be learning giant steps in all 12 keys. Which, by the way, I didn't do, because you know why? Fuck that. I had better things to do, like smoke weed all day and drink with the boys. I didn't have time to learn the same song in all 12 keys. Fuck that. That's stupid. Hated that shit. As soon as I graduated from music school, I was super lost. I distinctly remember stooping into this really, really big depression because I'd learned all these things and spent so much time getting really, really good at a lot of really weird things. So I really took jazz guitar, Brazilian guitar, music theory super seriously, but as soon as I left, I wasn't getting jazz gigs. A lot of my peers who were really good at jazz, they ended up making it. We have a couple guys I went to school with who actually do rather well in the jazz and classical music scene. But most of us weren't ever good enough to even remotely compete in those spaces. So where does that leave a place like your boy? Well, after college, I ended up actually working at a local record store like all other art students. So at a certain point in my life, I kind of decided I want to go back to school for something. So I decided to go back for accounting, but the issue was I was really, 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 really miserable. So it didn't really work out that well. I distinctly remember one day when I was blowing off studying and just doing a good old-fashioned Facebook scrolling, and I came across this one post that a fellow shared who actually plays in a band that sounds like this. He shared this one Facebook status from a local band that was looking for a guitar player to tour in the States with them for 6 weeks. So I thought to myself, I'm going to message these dudes. They sound pretty good. They're not going to get back to me. They have other things going on. And sure enough, they immediately got back to me. We talked on the phone. I auditioned. And next thing you know, I toured the States for like 6 weeks. And trust me, this will be a video coming up. There were so many crazy things that happened on this tour. It was an amazing experience, but also an awful one, but mostly an amazing one. It was great. One of the greatest times of my life. That band that I ended up touring with was Inhalants, which sound a little something like this. By the way, I'm also a full-time member of that band, so please check us out. Link in the description. When I started playing hardcore and metal again, I noticed how many legitimate fans were hanging out in this scene. When I was playing these shows, people would actually like lose their shit, and it was so fun to play. It really reinvigorated my interest in playing music again. The moral of the story here is honestly, you have to kind of just find your own way. You're going to go to music school and you're going to get really good. And I should have mentioned that earlier. I got so much better because I went to music school. Before music school, I had no groove. My theory chops sucked. I couldn't improvise to save my life. But now I can do all of these things. And I still retain and use all of that knowledge to this day. But I had to go through this really weird journey. The one thing that I really wish music school taught me was to basically find your own way and unapologetically be yourself. When you go to music school, you're essentially immersing yourself in a culture where you're really encouraged to play a small handful of musical styles that are essentially approved by your professors. And look, if you want to really get into jazz or classical, that's probably the way to go. And even if you just want to get good at music in general, that's also the way to go. But just know that you also have to be you, and you have to do what makes sense for you. I would never be able to compete in the jazz world. There are so many players who are so many miles ahead of me that I'd get blown out of the water, man. I couldn't keep up with those guys. Those guys are great players, honestly. But the happiest I've ever been has been when I have played with fans that are doing things that I think are really cool, and surmounted fans that are actually like worth having around. I love the APOC fans. I love the Inhalants fans. Those guys are real fans and they stick around forever, and they make my music journey feel so good and so rewarding. So this is your boy Mrak coming at you with a message of hope. I sprinkled in some negativity in there just to draw you in, so we get a little bit closer together, but it's okay. Everything's always going to be good. Just do you. Play the stuff you want to play. People are going to levitate towards it because you're being yourself. So with that being said, it's your boy Mrak. I'm out of here. I'll catch you next time.